In this video we're talking inductions. What should be an induction, and how do you know that that knowledge in that induction has been passed to the person that you've trained? We're doing a series of 7 videos where we've got our partners together from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and we're going to ask them a series of questions. Stick around, because at the end we're going to hear from our UK partners, and they may have a slightly different approach to these questions. With that, Laurie, would you like to answer this question? You've had quite a lot of experience in your different roles of inducting people, so I think you'll be able to shed some light on this.
I think the reality is that you can use online or offline. Either of those are an acceptable way of doing the induction. A couple of things about both of those is the content. The content has to be relevant to where the induction is based. It has to be site and workplace specific. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of online inductions that are available now, and really all it is just showing a video, asking 3 or 4 questions, and in actual fact it has no relevance to the site, or it has minimal relevance to the site, I would say. And again, there's not a problem with those, providing they are backed up by some site-specific induction. Right? So if I go to what is a good induction, is the content. The content has to be written properly, has to be relevant to the site, it has to deal with the hazards and risks that are associated with that site, and of course all HR things and those types of things. How do you determine whether it's effective? Well, to me there's a couple of things that we should look at. Is first of all, if we're going to do an induction, whether it be online or on site, is there's got to be some form of assessment. Agreed. A critical part of that. That assessment should pick out your key issues. You don't want to put them through 50 questions from their induction. It has to be key issues. And so there's an initial induction. The other side of the induction should be that as later down the track, 2 or 3 months in, you get a verification of it. Right? And if I've got time, just give a quick example. I used to run the orientations at a hospital, and we had a 2-day orientation session. And the nurse manager said to me, she said, "How much does this stick, Laurie?" So what we did is we put those people through that 2-day induction, and then 3 weeks later we ran a questionnaire based on the content of that induction. The correct answers was 29%, right? Which is pretty ordinary when you think about it. But then when we actually sat down and analysed it, I can understand why. Because when somebody starts on day 1, what are they interested in? Where are the toilets? When do I get paid? Who my supervisor is? Where do I eat? Where do I put my lunch? All of those sort of things. And they got all that right. I used to train them in fire. Right? So fire alarm goes off, you go down here, you go there, you go there. They don't even know where the toilets are yet, and I'm telling them in a fire induction where they go. So instead of doing half a day on fire induction, we brought it back down to 10 minutes. Fire extinguishers, in the event of a fire, report to your nurse manager and get evacuated. And then we brought them into the rest of the induction later on. So the reason I'm telling that story is it's overload. Right? The induction should not have overload in it for them. So
I'd add to that too, there's lots of evidence and research out there to say there's just a limit to how much people can take in a certain period. Personally, I think inductions are critical. What we approach it from, if I was a contractor or a worker arriving at your site to be inducted, they send a big message about how important is safety really at this site. I attended one recently at a construction site where they sent a junior graduate out to do it. Someone asked the question, any high risk activities on this site? And that person said, I don't know, and they just kept going. And that's not indicating it's really treated that importantly. Is safety important at this site? It's not sending the right message.
I think something that's important for us to recognise is the retention of information. And I like what you said just now with they wanted to know about where their lunch was put, etc., etc. Now, if we don't use it, we're going to lose it. So you'll train them in fire, and you might not have a mock drill for 3 months or 6 months.
Exactly.
So we've got to do the induction, but if we're going to ensure that learners retain the information, we've got to make regular interventions to keep that information front of mind in order to ensure that the traction of the information is better.
We have a time frame that we sort of go, induction, we want to get these people on board. But whether you staged it out as well, and you've got the critical stuff that they need to know, and then you go, okay, well let's have it in another week we'll go through some of the other stuff once people do know where the lunchroom is and the toilets.
Yeah, the best ones I've seen have been staged over a week, 2 weeks, where they have almost a mentor that just goes around with them, not continuously, but they'll drop in from time to time and just cover a checklist of topics that has to be done at some point in this next sort of week, 2 weeks, something like that.
You could always make it risk-based. Okay, what are the key risks we need to know, like you were talking about, Andrew? What are those key things you need to know? And then, as I say, the toilet paper and tea bag stuff, it's critical initially, but a lot of that other stuff isn't really needed until down the track. So,
yeah, I think thinking about it, design it for the person who's actually being inducted, and content dumps just people don't retain.
yeah.
I'm personally a fan of that face-to-face induction instead of the online. Data is not kept online, so it's understandable if later on you want to store it online and have reminders. But we also need to take a step back that you're dealing with a human. Yes, so this is not commodity. So almost drivers from regulatory requirements and all the certifications and what the compliance departments want us now. The list of things that we want to cover is almost like a commodity. Come here, tick, 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 tick. Okay, go. Whereas we need to remember that that's okay. A person has come to our environment. I have my friends here. I have my co-workers here, and I'm familiar with this environment. I need to welcome this person. That's the first important thing. Second thing is go through the essentials of where the toilets are and where we eat here and some of those basic things of who you report to. And then also completely agree with Laurie's point that you need to shorten that content into essential things that we used to. Just if we had like 50 risks in the company, we used to, pull a list of 10 things, 10 critical things and say, okay, it's important that you know where to eat and how to, the toilets and fire situation, but also these are the 10 important things that you don't go to the paint shop because we have acid dipping there, So some of those critical ones, and then touch base with them after a week, 2 weeks, and then we just have that 3 months. Period of just checking with them 2 or 3 times, and that's when I used to just say, okay, now that induction is completed, it can never be done in one day.
Yeah. The other critical thing is your follow-up.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of assumption as well. It's great content, but like we're saying, what retention do people have? And then a lot of companies won't even follow up after 3 months or 6 months, and the poor individual's going, well, hang on, I'm supposed to get reviewed or whatever. That's not done as well. So there's a whole induction piece that needs to be looked at.
It's not a once-off event.
No.
And,
As mentioned at the beginning of this video, we'll be hearing from the UK partners, so over to you.
I think it's the interpretation of induction first and foremost. A lot of companies think someone being inducted is simply bringing them into the business, showing them the fire safety rules and the evacuation points, and getting on with the job. For me, inductions goes much further than that, and I think an induction process should be a fairly lengthy activity. It shouldn't just be about that first hour when they arrive in the building. So it's much more about almost like a mini development plan that happens over the course of a short period of time, and I think multiple people have to be involved in it. But from experience, I find most people continue to use offline methods of doing induction. I think there are weaknesses in that, and that is the fact that you're not always aware of what's going on in that induction process, whether someone else is undertaking part of it, maybe a health and safety person is doing the fire risks and so on, the quality person's involved with the systems, and maybe a line manager's involved with the job activity inductions, but are they communicating with each other whether it's been done and what stage it's at? And often what ends up with is a bit of paper with a bunch of ticks on it and maybe a couple of signatures. And I'm not sure the actual value in this bit of paper, except does it explain that if something goes wrong, if it's presented in a court of law, is it enough evidence to say this person was shown X, Y, and Z?
Problem is people forget things from their very first day, which is typically when you get induction. So when I put this question out to LinkedIn, I had an interesting set of responses looking at the use of all online is too much, all offline probably isn't good enough these days. So I think that there was a feeling towards a combination of the traditional offline methodology and perhaps using online assessments as a means of demonstrating that people have actually understood, because traditionally it was a case of I've told them, you've signed, you've seen it. Now what we should be looking at as a way of demonstrating that it's been effectively delivered is evaluating that people understand what it is you've told them.
Yeah, I think also what you don't tend to see is any other training or sort of briefings or things like that people do. There'll always be some kind of feedback process to check that it was effective, and induction's probably one areas where it's critical information that's passed to employees they need to understand, and very, very few companies that I see really take much effort to identify whether it worked or not.
Yeah, well, we've got a Mango client recently that has used e-assessment, or starting to build the e-assessment module, starting to build an induction into it, which I think is quite a good thing, because you can also put a reminder into it to say, well, actually maybe after a year we should redo this, because the people actually remember, like you say, you have a lot of information coming to you in your first day that you might be nervous, so are they actually taking it all in?
So if you enjoyed this video, look at these ones. These are our previous videos, and you might get some more value out of them. Thank you.